Today, we've got a really cool training for you. It's called How to Become a Voice of Value. This is extremely important for a few reasons. It's going to allow you to really penetrate through the noise out there. It's also going to allow you to charge a lot more for what you do. And it's going to help you win at the game of attention. I think this is super, super powerful. It's something that served me really well. And I think it's going to serve you really well. You need to become a thought leader in your industry. It used to be enough to sell a really good product or a really good service, provide really good support. Now people are seeking thought leaders. And this applies to even boring industries, to commodity products. I think, in fact, if anything, it applies more to boring and commodity products and businesses. A lot of times when I talk about being a voice of value or a thought leader, I'll have people tune out and say, oh, that doesn't apply to me. I sell this boring product or this boring service. I'm an accountant or I'm a bookkeeper. This is a real mistake. You need to become a thought leader in your industry. You need to have valuable ideas that others are willing to share and spread. Think about the last time you forwarded an email or shared a social media post. It's usually because someone's had a valuable idea or an unusual idea or something slightly controversial. The next thing you need to do when it comes to being a voice of value is curating content and ideas. Curation has become so much more important because it used to be the case that we could look at all that was coming through in the marketplace, on social media, all of that. Now there's just a flood. And so curation has become such an important part of being a voice of value, filtering all of the best ideas and all of the best strategies that you come across and sharing that with your audience. You don't even have to come up with anything new of your own if you're going to be a voice of value to your tribe. It's so important to have an opinion. It may be something that's happening in your industry that you don't agree with, or that you do agree with, or some strong opinion that you have. Stand for something, because there's nothing worse than someone who's wishy-washy. People want to follow strong leaders, and becoming a voice of value, it's being that strong leader. So why is this important? This is important for a few reasons. First of all, you want to position yourself as an authority and an expert in your niche, because people want to deal with experts, people who are going to provide them a lot of value, people who are going to move them in the direction that they want to move. And I think positioning is one of the key, most important points that you can possibly think about when it comes to closing deals. I talk about this a lot in the book. I talk about becoming a trusted advisor rather than a salesperson. Never let them feel that you're in sales, even though we are in sales. And it's not that we're tricking people or anything like that, but sales became this adversarial thing where you've got to push, you've got to cajole, you've got to convince, you've got to close the deal, ABC, always be closing. And it's made people afraid of salespeople. It's made people do weird stuff, avoid them, not return phone calls, not reply to emails, all of those sorts of things. Whereas a trusted advisor is sought out. In my business, people come to us, people reply to my emails, people seek us out. And it's just such a much more pleasurable way of doing business, rather than if I had to start every day and think, okay, I've got to make 20 cold calls today, I would hate my life. So I don't want to do that. And I certainly don't want you to have to do that. Next, it really builds relationships with your target market. I think this is incredibly important because the value of relationships has become so much more part of doing business. A lot of things used to be transactional. You used to sell average stuff to average people, charge an average price, and you'd do okay. But now you want to build relationships for life. There's some practical reasons, like the cost of customer acquisition has gone up dramatically. It's incredibly expensive to acquire a new customer. And so when you do, you want to build that relationship for life. Now, that's a practical reason, but there are other reasons. You can expand that relationship. You can charge more for what you do. You attract better clients. And I think that's probably one of the most important reasons, because I want to come into my business. I want to enjoy working with these people. I want to look forward to Mondays. I don't want to be dreading talking to clients. I want to have a relationship with my clients where I'm excited when they say, hey, I'm in town. Would you like to catch up for a coffee? Or can I ask your opinion on something? I think relationships have become far more important, and building that relationship with your audience, it's going to set you apart from your competitors. So many people are just playing that transactional game where they're swapping products or services for dollars. And that's a losing game because it's always going to come down to price. If you're playing a transactional game, that's a very short-lived experiment, and that's not going to serve your business. Next is they buy who you are. People are thinking a lot more in tribal terms. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, but it is the case. You need to show who you are. They buy who you are as much as what you sell. And I'm not saying that you have to be super controversial, outrageous, or whatever, but be yourself. So many times I see marketing that's afraid to be itself. People who are afraid to have an opinion, afraid to show what they believe in, who are afraid to be themselves. And they try to put on this professional kind of personality and one that has no opinions, where they're hedging every sentence. And I think that's something that's become very unattractive. People who don't do that, people who do the opposite of that, will have much, much more cut through in the marketplace. I think that's incredibly powerful. Being a voice of value really drives your content flywheel. I'll give you an example of this from our own business. I create audio and video content that often gets transcribed, that gets turned into blog posts by my copywriter, that turns into email content, that turns into training. So doing the work once is going to turn into a very leveraged approach to content. It creates that content flywheel, that whole system that is able to really get your content out to a lot of people. And this is important because marketing is a process, not an event. Marketing is never done. So it's something that you're going to continually do over time. And our content flywheel just gets more and more powerful over time. So as we create new content, as we syndicate it in different channels, as we repurpose it for different purposes, as we move it to different modalities, it gets more and more powerful. So I keep adding people and processes to my team, and our message gets out further and further. And I think this is incredibly powerful, and you can do this too. It all starts with who your audience is. Who are your people going to be? It's no mistake that the one-page marketing plan starts out with your target market. Really understanding who your audience is incredibly important. Who are going to be your people that you're going to stand for, that you're going to be a voice of value to? When you've chosen your audience, you can do two things, and really you probably should do both creation and curation. So we talked about this a little bit already. An example I used was Tim Ferriss. Now, Tim Ferriss, he started as a creator. He created the 4-Hour Work Week, came up with all the concepts and wrote the book and all of that. But more and more, he's moved towards curation, excellent ideas, having interesting people on, having all of those sorts of opinions on, and bringing those people there. I subscribe to his podcast. Why? I don't listen to every episode, but I'll flick through because I know he'll usually have someone interesting on. I'm like, oh, cool, that person. I'd like to hear what they've got to say. And he really goes deep with that. You don't have to be a super inventive creator, someone who is inventing something brand new that nobody's ever thought of. You can take existing ideas in the marketplace and share them with your audience. What will you stand for? What's something happening in your industry or affecting your audience that you can take a stand for, that you can step in and say, hey, this is what I think of this. This is what I think of what's happening here. And like I said, so many times people just hedge their opinions. They hedge every word they say. Some people might think of it this way, but other people might think of it that way. And I'm like, dude, what do you think? What's your opinion? What should I do? And I think this is incredibly important. What will you stand for? What is it that will make people follow you? Because notice some of the voices that really cut through on social media, they get polarizing voices. Why? Because polarizing voices cut through. Next is, where will you show up? What media will you show up? And again, it's no mistake that we use media very early on in the one-page marketing plan. Now, we'll talk about media and modality in a moment and how to select your media, but think about, where will you show up? And something that I really like is showing up out of place. So a lot of times it's predictable what media people show up in, But if you can show up out of place somewhere where you don't necessarily belong, I think this is incredibly powerful. Becoming a voice of value is powerful all throughout the one-page marketing plan. And I'll show you a few examples. Robert Cialdini talks about PreSuasion. Now, I want to talk about PreSuasion and the before phase. If you're becoming a voice of value into your audience, long before they ever are aware of you, when they become aware of you because of your before phase, it's going to be so much more powerful when they can go and have a look at your back catalog of content. Whenever I discover someone new that I want to follow or listen to their opinions, it's very common that I'll go to their back catalog, maybe their YouTube channel, maybe their blog or email list or whatever else. I want to see, hey, what have I missed? What have they been writing about? I think this is incredibly important in the before phase. So in the before phase, we want to cut through the noise and being that voice of value. Next is in the conversion, in the during phase. So you've captured a lead and they kind of raise their hand and say, look, I'm vaguely interested in what you've got to offer. This is your opportunity to inform, to entertain, to educate, to be that voice of value. Why? Because all of your competition, when they get into this phase, they're just going to be focused on the sale, on the transaction. If you're being that voice of value, someone who's got an opinion, someone who is driving thought leadership in that industry, that's incredibly attractive to prospects. That's going to be incredibly helpful in your conversion phase. That's going to help you nurture people. And then when it comes to stage 6 in the one-page marketing plan, which is sales conversion, it's just going to be a slam dunk. Like I said, it's about positioning and passing the ball to the right locations. I used to hate sales in my first few businesses. I used to hate it. Why? Because when I employed a sales trainer to train me, he used to train me all this weird stuff that I hated doing. Like I had to put pressure, I had to use these weird closes. I had to follow up, and people weren't responding. And I'm like, I hate this. I would just do anything else to avoid doing sales. Now, I absolutely love it. Why? Because I'm talking to people who are already pre-interested, pre-motivated. They love what I do. We're having interesting conversations. And then those conversations usually end in them asking how they can join our program or how they can join coaching or how they can join a membership program or whatever else. And guess what? There's no convincing, there's no pushing. Finally, in delivery and retention in the after phase. And really in the book, I don't talk about being a voice of value right up until the delivering a world-class experience, because retention is such an incredibly important component of this. It's easy to get someone to buy from you once. It's easy to get someone to sign up for your membership for 1 month, 2 months. The retention's a difficult thing. Almost all of my businesses have been recurring revenue businesses, and I'm frequently quoted as saying that's the 8th wonder of the world. Big issue with recurring revenue businesses that many people don't talk about, and that issue is churn. You can get someone to sign up for it, but getting them to stay long-term, to get a lot of value, that's actually difficult. And that's something that you really address by being that voice of value. So I'm going to give you some concrete examples. I'm going to give you some examples from other people's businesses. I'm going to give you examples from my own. Now, I've purposely chosen some really boring businesses as an example, because like I said, I always get the objection of people saying, hey, I just do normal stuff. I'm not really got any super exciting kind of content or anything I sell. There's nothing really exciting about what kind of voice of value can I be? How can I have an opinion or whatever? I'm going to show you a couple of examples. I came across this woman. Her name is Miss Excel. She calls herself the Chief Excel Officer. She's on TikTok and Instagram. All she does is has these 3-minute little videos. She dances around and shows you how to do a pivot table or shows you how to do some, I don't know, trick in Excel or whatever. Her whole thing is Excel. There's literally nothing more boring than Excel. If you want to bore someone, just fire up Excel. She's got over 700,000 followers on TikTok. She's got 1.4 million likes. But more importantly than likes and followers, because you can't take likes and followers to the bank, she does about $1 million a year of Excel courses. She sells Excel courses. And so she shows up, she dances about, she smiles, because I mean, the last thing you expect when you're looking at content about Excel is a young girl dancing around, having a good time, smiling and all of that sort of thing. And it's a pattern interrupt. You usually expect some crusty old guy in a boring way, taking you through, showing you what to do. So it's a real pattern interrupt. And I think she's taking something that is literally one of the most boring things and become that voice of value. I follow her on TikTok and I don't even use Excel. And I think just because her content is so valuable, it's entertaining. She's done an incredible job. And now Microsoft is sponsoring her, bringing her to events and all of that sort of stuff. Jim Cramer, this dude is wrong about almost everything on the stock market, but he's very opinionated. He always has something to say that's either slightly controversial or whatever. And so he's always invited to give his opinion, and he does a good job at entertaining his audience and keeping them engaged. Now get this, here's the next one. This guy literally has the #1 blog in the world on pens. Pens, people. So here's a blog post that went up to #1 on one of the news aggregation sites, the 41 best pens for 2022. I even clicked on it. I'm like, what is going on? Like, why is this the #1 story on this site? And he talks about pens, ballpoint pens. This is literally the most in-depth article on gel ballpoint rollerball pens that I have ever seen in my life. This dude likes pens, right? And so he makes an incredible amount of money from affiliate commissions. He's got sponsorships. You can buy banner ads on his website. So if you sell pens, you're going to advertise on his website. You're going to let him become an affiliate of your services. Like literally, you could not find anything more boring than pens, personal finance, and Excel. And these are examples of people who are really cutting through, who are doing incredible revenue from what they do. And they've just had a little bit of a spin on something that they're doing. So the qualities of extraordinary businesses that become tribe leaders, they continually focus on wowing their customers. They foster lifetime relationships by being that voice of value. They make it easy and fun to deal with them. They create a sense of theater with their products and services. And then finally, it's really just telling your story. What does it take to deliver what you do? I think that's such a neglected part of being a voice of value, taking people behind the scenes, showing them what you do, how you do it. And so many people think that this is boring, but it's really not. I'm fascinated with some of these Instagram channels and TikTok channels where people are just showing how butter is made or how some wood is churned or whatever. Most people have no idea what goes into delivering your product or service and what it takes. And I think if you can tell them that story, it becomes incredibly powerful. I hope you really enjoyed today's session. Bye for now.